Hey guys, how are you? Today we're going to cover a different SS4 Vegeta ramp from the last video I made. Today I am here with Anthony, who placed 12th at the most recent TAC regionals on the 17th, and then came 4th at a store regionals with this deck as well quite recently. So congratulations, Anthony. And yeah, how'd you like SS4 Vegeta ramp?
Oh, yeah, thanks for having me. SS4 Vegeta Ramp is, in my opinion, the most underrated blue deck out there. Everyone seems to think it's like a tier down from like the Blue Babies or the Soul Strikers or whatnot, and I'm here to say no, it is as good, if not better than them, if you know what to do with it.
Yeah, it's fair enough. It's
But for those who haven't seen what the leader is capable of, what you need to realize is that it ramps just as fast as SS3 in many cases. It uses as much energy as Soul Striker because once you've got those ramps, you've got the extra energy instead of the untap, so it's the same amount of energy usage. Against Baby, because of the extra energy, you can run just as many negates. So it's kind of like that mixture of all of them, with the one potential downside that a very few specific decks can cause it issues. But we can get to that another time.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, let's get right into the leader. So on the unawakened side, this leader has an auto. When this card attacks, you get a draw card. Then it has a auto once per turn. When you deal a damage to your opponent by attacking with this card, you can look at the top card of the deck. If it's mono blue, you may place it in your energy and rest mode. Otherwise, place it on the top of your deck. So this is where the ramp comes in. Unfortunately, is awaken is a bit underwhelming, but that's okay. You just when you're at 4 or less, you get a draw card. And then
It doesn't matter. The Awaken only needs to be draw one.
that is fair enough. And then on the Awaken side, when this card attacks, you get draw one. And when your opponent activates a counter skill, you get to switch this card to active mode. And then once again, it has the same once per turn auto. When you deal damage to your opponent by attacking with this card, you get to look at the top card of your deck. If it's mono blue, you may place it in your energy burst mode. Otherwise, place it on top of your deck. So, Vegeta, as you were saying, this is an underrated blue leader, but what put you onto it in the first place? And like, why did you commit to playing this deck, I suppose?
Okay, well, there was one specific new card that came out that put me onto the deck, and we'll see it shortly because it was my favorite character and one of the strongest cards in the game. And I was like, I want to abuse that. What leader abuses that the most? So when we get to the card, I'll explain it. But the actual benefits of the leader is that you don't actually lose any value for attempting to ramp. So typically, when you attack, you want to draw a card. So you attack to draw a card. Your opponent then gets a really awkward choice. Either they negate the attack or they block. If they block, that's usually with a little blocker, in which case they're minusing some sort of card advantage in some way because they're using their blockers early rather than later. If they're negating, then they're using their negates early while they still have a little hand size, and they can't really save those for when they actually need them later in the game. Or they can combo over you, in which case, depending on how big you made it, they might dump an entire hand to stop a ramp. So in most cases, the ramp goes through. In regards to the Awaken skill, the reason that a draw one is fine is because when you actually ramp, the way the deck is built, every card that gets ramped or charged acts as extra cards in your hand, just because you can think of the extra energy there as a complete free +1. If you were to just look at a pure card advantage, you swing, you draw a card. If they don't allow it through, then they lose a card from their hand, so it's become a swing +2. If they do allow it through, then the +2 ends up in your energy. So it's just a double advantage leader, even on the unawakened side. On the awakened side, it just compounds even more, because if they try and counter it, or any of the other cards, the restand means it gets a second chance to attack and ramp, or a second chance to deal with threats on the board, or a second chance to just apply extra pressure. And the ramp on the awakened side is just as valuable as the unawakened side, because although some people would think, I've already got 10 energy, I don't need to get to 11 or 12, every extra energy allows for multiple extra potential plays with this particular deck. But we'll see that as we go in, because it's the combinations of cards that work really well.
Yep, that is a very good way to put it. This deck generates a lot of advantage, which is unseen to someone who doesn't really understand the full advantage of what we dub as hand advantage. And your build, as we will see later, makes use of every last energy, which is something you don't always see in SS4 Vegeta builds, so that's really cool.
And going forward, as we go into the rest of the cards, I'll put a disclaimer for anyone curious. Typical hand size for this deck is anywhere between 10 and 15 cards.
which
So
is
it draws.
for those who don't know, it is a big amount indeed. Then in terms of the unisons we got in the deck and the other ramp cards we got in the deck, we have three SS Vegeta Rise of the Super Warrior. So when you play this card, you get to look at the top four cards of your deck, and then you get to choose any number of mono blue cards among them and add them to your hand. You can then place the remaining mono blue cards in your energy and place any other cards you want at the bottom of your deck. It is also a 30k blocker. At the end of the turn, you get to switch it to active, so you get to swing with it, and then you get to use it as a blocker. For our unison, we've got the Majin Buu Assault of the Agents of Destruction, which is a double strike blocker. Activate main's really good. You get draw one, untap one at the start of your opponent's next main phase, and then switch this card to active mode as well. Really nice. And then the -1, if your opponent attacks with a battle card, you may choose one of your battle cards, place it at the bottom of its owner's deck. Very, very good card. And then God Sealing Technique, if you don't know it by now, basically just bounces anything back to hand. Really, really dumb counterplay. But the big question here, Anthony, why are we not running the Goku Unison?
Why are we not running the Golden Ape? Put simply, the Golden Ape is bad. In a meta which can potentially be fast, you can't afford to spend 2 energy on turn 2 without losing an enormous amount of life. The deck actually would typically use the Golden Ape just to make your leader bigger, but if they're going to negate or block, then it doesn't really matter how big your leader is, and the ape itself is using energy that could be used defensively on your opponent's turn just to stabilize, draw through your deck, or set yourself up for the following turn. The big draw of the Majin Buu unison, which is, for the record, Majin Buu happens to be my favorite character in the game. And Majin Buu coming out as one of the strongest unisons in the game, period, immediately said, I want to play this card. So when we said I wanted to play this leader, it was to abuse this card. It's to abuse the Majin Buu. In this deck, Majin Buu gets played on turn 3. And playing it on turn 3 is disgusting. Because it means on turn 3, you end up not only with a unison that can bottom deck your opponent's cards, that sustains your draw power, that can defend your leader, that can remove your opponent's threats, but it leaves you with enough energy to keep it alive, because typically at the moment, the game, like there are some decks that can do a lot on turn 3, but none of them can really remove this unison on turn 3. There are plenty of decks that can put a lot of pressure on this on turn 4, and they even struggle with it on turn 4, but if it comes out on turn 3, it typically survives the turn with maximum markers. And when it does that, the number of times I've played this Buu unison and it keeps all of its markers pretty much the entire game, you may only ever need to see one. But if you do ever want to see a second, you can play another one. It really carries the deck. I can't give any more words for this. It shuts down just about every possible threat without barrier that they could possibly try and play. And removing it in this particular deck is incredibly difficult because most of the attacks are going to be negated when they swing at unisons. And of course, there's blockers in this deck, which other blue leaders don't take as much advantage of. Speaking of blockers, the SS4 Vegeta. The fact that it ramps is probably the biggest draw card, draw of the actual card. It's more so a stabilizing card and a setup card. You don't play it to say, I'm going to win next turn. It's more a case of stabilize, set up, do what you need to do. If you're playing against something that's limiting your hand, you draw 4 cards. If you need to play a big card on the following turn, you ramp any of the cards you see. I was very careful to make sure that the deck is completely mono blue so that both the leader and this card will never miss anything. With the leader being the important part. And again, when we get to God Sealing is God Sealing. If you're not running God Sealing with a deck with a deck that runs this Majin Buu unison, I don't know what type of deck you're building.
Yeah,
it's just not good. But if nothing else, like the SS4 Vegeta, it can attack and it can restand. But there are a lot of times in this current format where you actually don't want to enter the battle step after you've played it because it opens up the door for them to kill it. It's often just fine to play the Vegeta either ramp or draw and then just leave it up as a blocker, because when you combine the blocker of Vegeta with the unison, you're essentially stopping 3 attacks right there, plus whatever negates are in your hand, plus whatever other blockers have been established on previous turns. So It sets up a wall. And if anyone doesn't like playing against Baby, I've got news for you. This deck can be more oppressive than that.
Yeah, blockers. The 30k blockers are just really hard to deal with, especially. Moving on to probably your favorite part of the deck, we've got the Buu package. So we have finally seen a usage of the 1-drop Buu that came in the Evolution Booster. So it has the on-play order. When you play this card, you get a draw a card. Then, if all cards if in your leader and energy area are mono blue and your opponent has 3 or more energy, you may play one blue Majin Buu card with an energy cost of 7 from your energy area. If you do place this card in your energy area and rest, then place up to one Sun Gohan Adolescence card with an energy cost of 4 or less from your drop in your drop from your drop in no, I can't read. 4 or less from your deck into your drop area, then shuffle your deck, and then you can only play Majin Buu battle cards for the turn. So this brings out the big 7 drop, which is a triple strike. When this card is played from your energy, choose up to one battle card in your drop, place it under this card, then switch up to one of your blue energy to active mode. And then auto, once per turn, when this card attacks, if there's a Sun Gohan Adolescence card under this card, choose one of your opponent's battle cards, place it under this card, and switch this card to active mode. And then we have our Sun Gohan Adolescence, which is a deflect barrier blocker revenge. When this card KOs an opponent's battle card, switch this card and one of your mono blue energy to active mode. That was a lot of text.
It is. There's a lot to get through, for sure.
Yes, great package. Why did you decide on this? I understand you love Boo, and that could have been why you decided to play it, but it is quite a unique package. How did you come across playing this?
Okay, so there's a few advantages that this particular package allows. The first part is that the base of it is a one-drop draw card, which in the early turns means you can filter through the deck far more quickly, and something that anyone who rewinds the video and goes through all the deck will notice is a lot of the cards on the say draw in one form or another. This is no exception. If you're playing against a deck which can't immediately remove one-drops or doesn't necessarily prioritize it, then paying what is essentially going to be 2 energy on a following turn for a dual attack triple strike that can remove an opponent's threat turn after turn is disgusting. It's like really, really strong. And the fact that it's 25k means more often than not, the Big Boo will often swing into battle cards and or unisons. Very rarely does it actually swing at leaders. It's either a 25k to remove a battle card and suck up another battle card, or it swings and clears a unison. And it's really annoying for people because they think, I've got 3 markers on my unison. They have a limited amount of energy. I can keep this. And you suddenly swing at it with a really cheap triple striker. And it's like, oh, unison's dead. The card is a value machine. That's what it's there for. The other reason it's there is because the 1-drop plays the 7-drop from the energy. The 7-drop is 1, an easy charge target, and 2, it's a threat for later in the game that can be activated at any time, even after massive other plays have occurred. So it's like a guaranteed potential win con if you don't have the cards in your hand because the card's already in your energy ready to go. All you need to do is see a 1-drop, and there are many ways to do that. You can have it on your board from a previous turn. You could have it in your energy and add it back to your hand to play it again. You could hang on to it or see it later. It's like an easy, quick threat that can come out, so you don't actually need anything else. Moving on to Great Saiyaman, though. Great Saiyaman, in my opinion, is MVP of this deck. I apologize to anyone who had to play against a wall of Great Saiyamans because this deck generates so much energy and so much untap. And when I say untap, I am not talking just untap with Dimension Magic. We are talking untap with like 16 different cards, including this one itself. It's absurd. This deck untaps more energy than SS4 does. But that card, when you combine it with the Unison, the Boo Unison, means that you've got a Revenge Barrier blocker that can potentially restand, and it will restand in this deck, because when it blocks a battle card, I will give you a newsflash. If you don't want your battle card to die, you need to attack into this Great Saiyaman with something of a 30k or more bigger battle card, because anything less than that, and this guy's going to restand. And he'll kill your card, and he'll untap an energy, and he'll block again. Having Deflect and Barrier means you can't touch him. Blocker and Revenge being able to block twice, it's like a dual blocker. And it's a dual blocker that clears threats, which is incredibly important because the blue in general, historically, has had a poor time removing threats. And that's another thing that this package helps with. Great Saiyaman removes whatever threat attacks. Boo can suck up anything without barrier, and the Unison itself can also bottom deck cards. So all the Boos and the Saiyamans as a whole mean that the opponent's board is constantly getting cleared, even though we're playing blue, which has historically been blue's worst thing. Great Saiyaman is good the first time you play it. When you drop the second or even the third one, if they don't have a way to like vast barrier removal, it can be scoops because the card just mows down entire fields, and they just have to sit there and go, "Oh, I can't swing because all my cards will die if I do."
Yep. Yep. It's a very, very good package. I never considered this before, but looking at it now, it's like it just generates so much advantage for free. It's pretty ridiculous. And as you'll see later, with Android 17, you can like play Boo on one turn, and then if you have 10 energy, which honestly is not too much to ask for on this deck, you can go turning the tides and then activate main on Boo to play the 7-drop Boo from your energy, and you're like
easily, which is great because that's the main that's the play I was mentioning earlier when you have a big threat that you can be ready to go.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the biggest problem with playing a big dude? You have to worry about counter plays. But they might have if they have no hand, they have no counter plays. But I have no hand either. Oh wait, it's in the energy. That's fine.
Yep, very, very nasty indeed. Now on to our Bojack package plus the counter ape. So you got Galactic Buster, which is a card that came out in the Bojack for the Bojack deck, but it works with any mono blue leader. So if your leader is a Bojack Brigade card or a mono blue card, you get to choose one of your mono blue battle cards with a combo cost of 1, draw 1 card, then use that card in a combo. If it's your opponent's turn and use a card in a combo with this skill, place this card in your energy from your drop area, and at the end of the battle, switch up to one of your energies to rest mode. You can't activate battle on copies of this card for the turn. So essentially has limit, the new keyword, but limit wasn't out when this card was printed. And then you got Bojack on a rampage, which is one of the targets for Galactic Buster. So at the end of the battle in which you combo with this card, you can pay 4. If you do, you draw 1, choose one of your opponent's battle cards, place it at the bottom of their deck, then play this card from your drop area in rest mode. Auto once per turn, this card's in rest mode. When your opponent attacks with a battle card, switch one of your blue energy to rest mode, then one of your opponent's energy to... So one of your blue energy to active, one of your opponent's energy to rest mode, which is insane. And it's also a double striker dual attack. And then the Baby Ape Golden Avenger is a counterplay, and it will return a 7 or less to hand instead of being played. It's a counter. Both of these counter skills will play the card. And when this card is played, you get draw 1, then choose one of your opponent's battle cards, ignoring barrier, place it at the bottom of its owner's deck, and it's also a triple striker. So yeah, walk me through the Bojack package and your baby apes.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, this deck untaps an enormous amount of energy. Like the number of you can tap out, your Unison will restand 1, and your other various effects in the deck are going to restand anywhere between 2 and 5 other energy on any one given turn with minimal loss of cards in your hand. So the energy is good if you can use it. And so the Bojack package really just makes the most use out of that. I only recently put the Bojack engine in, but it was always supposed to be in the deck. It was just a matter of finding out what I needed to take out or what was less useful in the previous build, which we can discuss later. But the Bojack just makes use of all that extra energy which is sitting there. And it actually combines extremely well with Great Saiyaman. For those who didn't realize that they were able to do this, people think, if I activate a Galactic Buster, I can get 1 temporary energy, and that 1 temporary energy allows me to play my Bojack, and then because I'm tapped out, I don't have to tap down an energy. Cool. So the interaction goes something like this. Swing with battle card, block with Great Saiyaman. They look at Great Saiyaman and they think, it's a revenge blocker. I might pump it up to, like, say, 25 or 20 or whatever it is. You Galactic Buster, you combo with the Bojack. You untap with either a Zeno Super Combo, a Sensu Bean, or you might have already just untapped enough with the Galactic Buster. The card that attacked gets killed because the Great Saiyaman has revenge. All the energy that you activated gets used into playing Bojack. Bojack gets played, draws you a card, bottom decks one of their threats, comes out as a threat which they then have to deal with. Then you choose to rest an energy for Galactic Buster, and because all your energy's in rest mode, you can't do it. And then after that resolves, your Great Saiyaman resolves. Having killed the card, the auto, when it resolves, it switches back to active and turns one of your energy back to active. So you actually end the whole thing, the whole Bojack play, with an energy still, not having tapped out or lost any value of your energy.
Now, I'm going to butt in here with a quick question. Does this work in reverse? So just say you have 3 energy in active mode and you want to play the Bojack, can you choose to resolve the Gohan first to untap an energy and then play the Bojack, or does the Gohan have to resolve last?
So are you saying if it's your turn and you attack with the Gohan?
No, so if it's your opponent's turn and
Yep.
you block with the Gohan and you have 3 energy, so the Gohan kills something, can you then use that Gohan to untap that 4th energy to play the Bojack?
No, because you would have needed to have used the Galactic Buster in order to get the Bojack into your combo area.
Oh, sorry, like you use Galactic Buster, right? So
Yep.
that puts you on 3 energy untapped.
Yes, yes. So if you're, I know what you mean. So
Yeah.
if you're on 3 energy and you block with Great Saiyaman, you activate Galactic Buster, which gives you energy number 4. You tap down 4 for Bojack. You then rest the non-existent energy, and then after all of that, your Great Saiyaman restands 1.
Yeah, yeah. What I was saying was the Great Saiyaman, so that restands 1. So just say if you have 2 energy, you Galactic Buster, so you have 3. Can that Great Saiyaman be the 4th energy to play Bojack on a rampage?
No, because
No.
it only procs after the battle is finished.
Alright, that is unfortunate, but it's still good to know.
No, but that's fine. That's why we have a single Zeno super combo or a Sensu Bean to fill in the gap.
100%. Alright, and then you've got your baby Golden Apes.
Well, this deck creates an exorbitant amount of energy, so pay 5 for this card and use it when you need it. It either guarantees that your big winning plays go off, or it shuts down the defensive plays. Like, against decks like Invoker, it prevents them from playing their win cons. Against decks that try and put out a floodgate on a particular turn, it will prevent them from doing that. It's just a card worth paying 5 for when you're sitting there with 10 energy on the board. It's like, who needs to pay 3 in a deck where you have 5 energy when you can pay 5 in a deck where you have 10 energy?
Yep, makes sense. Moving on, we have our negate package. So you've got 4 D-Magics. I don't think anyone really needs to hear what D-Magic does. You have 2 Final Spirit Cannon, where if your leader's mono blue, you negate the attack, then you can choose 1 mono blue card in your hand, discard it. If you do, draw 2. And then 2 Vegeta Ready to Rumble. It's a blocker, negate the attack and play this card, and it's got an on-play order. When this card is played, your opponent can't attack for the turn unless they place 1 of their energy in its drop. And yeah, walk me through your negates.
Okay, well, D-Magic is D-Magic. Untapping energy is nice. Strangely enough, D-Magic is really there just to keep the Unison alive. The cards I like more are the Vegeta Ready to Rumble and Final Shine. I don't know why more people don't run Final Shine. For the fact that we untap so much energy, and as you'll see, Sensu Beans plus Seno Super Combos plus Great Saiyaman untaps means that you have 2, 3, 4 energy open at all times, even if you tapped out on the previous turn. So you've got to spend the energy somehow. Final Shine means that you can filter through the deck and find the pieces that you need, and if you have any dead cards in your hand, they just disappear. Drawing 2 digs very, very deep into your deck and can do so at times when you really need to. So, like, you could negate an attack and be like, I don't have a Zeno super combo in my hand, and then dig 2, and it's like, there it is. Now my Bojack's online because I can use a super combo to add my Galactic Buster to then activate a Bojack. It just filters through the deck. As for Vegeta Ready to Rumble, it's a turn stop. And in other decks, it can be painful because they can think, I played this card. If I swing, I have to crit an energy. That's not very nice. But when in this deck, it's activated at a time where your blocker is a Unison, your blocker can bottom. Your Unison is a blocker. Your Unison can bottom deck a card. You're sitting there with a Great Saiyaman or 2 on the board. You've got an SS4 Vegeta on the board. So you've got like 3 or 4 blockers plus negates in your hand plus him, and he's a blocker himself. If they want to get through you that turn, they have to crit 5 energy, and they're just going to say nope, and they just stop. And with a deck of so much energy, it essentially for like 2 more copies of Baby Hatch in that regard, just because it can just say stop a turn, which is awesome. And of course, we're running SS4 Vegeta GT, so anyone not running both Final Shine and Vegeta Ready to Rumble, you're doing it wrong.
Of course, you gotta have your deck themed to the right deck. Then just on to some other stuff. We've got your 4 Zeno Edge of Space super combos and your 4 Ultra Instinct Goku's Kamehameha. Is there ever a consideration to run Vegeta super combo instead of Zeno, or Zeno just too much?
No. You cannot run Vegeta in this deck. There's a few reasons for it, but earlier when you asked me why am I not running the Goku Ape, and I said it was bad, it's not necessary. These two cards are the reason why. Obviously, if you attack and you hit them with a UI Kamehameha, it's much harder to combo out of. But what people don't realize about the Zeno Super Combo is that is actually 4 extra copies of a 5k less combo of a UI Kamehameha. It's essentially an Unbreakable Goku or an Infernal Villainy Cell. All you have to do is play it, draw a card, swing, and combo it. And it's exactly the same amount of value. So your super combo is a utility card in this deck. Because you draw so many cards with the deck, and as I think 30 out of the 53 cards in the deck say the word draw on them. So most of the deck draws cards. You don't need more draw power. What you need is utility and energy usage, and the ability to access the cards that are charged, either there on purpose or by accident. So the first Zeno super combo might very well be your first potential ramp. And the other 2 or 3 copies that you see are going to be access to your energy, which is utility like you would not believe. Being able to suddenly put a Galactic Buster back to your hand in order to activate a Bojack, or put down the 7-drop Boo into the energy so that you can tap it to play it. Being able to put a card in your energy, and this I have done before, and it's hilarious. You put down a card in your energy that you want to keep, you put a Zeno super combo on the board, and then you play an Android 17, and both players' hands get wiped, and on the following turn, when they attack, you activate the Zeno super combo, and the card you wanted to keep goes back to your hand.
Very nice.
So, there's a lot of sneaky little tricks you can do with this. You're essentially running 8 copies of a very big combo card that can help you ramp, and you hard mull for these. Like, if you want to see anything, these are the 2 cards that you want to see at the start of the game. Nothing else really matters.
That's fair enough.
Like the Unison, you can say the Unison's maybe the strongest card in the deck, but you will draw into it because the deck draws so much. Both of these cards draw a card, the leader will draw, every other card will draw. So by turn 3, you almost always have a Unison, whether you hard mull for it or not. These are the cards you hard mull for.
Yep, that is fair enough. They're both very good cards. And Zeno can also act as a draw super combo with Galactic Buster, because you can put Galactic Buster in your hand, use it, which draws a card.
Yes.
So it can also act as that draw a card super combo in those situations.
The primary purpose, though, of Zeno is that you need the leader ramp, and if you're not running the Unison to pump it, then this acts as the other copies, and it is a far more efficient version of that.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. On to our other boss monsters and secret rare light cards. We have 2 Android 17 Turning the Tides and 1 Baby Hatch. Do these need to go on much explanation, or do you think they're just must-haves in the deck?
Well, there is certainly some explanation that can help in using them properly. Baby Hatch in this particular deck is more often than not used in the earlier turns. Like, you would much earlier than people would usually use a Baby Hatch, rather than leaving it for like that final turn where everyone's set up to do their thing. Baby Hatch in this just stalls and maintains card advantage when on that one turn you may not have the energy or the resources to defend yourself in other ways. The deck has already so much defensive power that the 1 extra turn might be enough to say untap, play a bunch of blockers, set up my negates, and be like, I don't need Baby Hatch anymore, it's done its job.
Yep.
So more often than not it gets used early, but even if you don't see it early and you see it late, it's still a great card. It can just end games just by virtue of stopping the opponent from finishing you off. And I think there's a difference between just spamming it and using it well, like using it at a time. Like, some people say use it at the end of their swings when they're running out of value, and they're sure you can do that. My preferred way of using it is using it, as I mentioned, in the early turns, just to keep a Unison alive, for example. If you can keep your Unison at 4 markers and suddenly you play a bunch of blockers, then the Unison keeps those markers for the rest of the game, and it makes a big difference. The Baby Hatch might turn into 4 or 5 cards worth of value just simply because the Unison will draw those cards throughout the game. When it comes to the Android 17, this deck charges an enormous amount of energy, and it does it very, very quickly. Android 17 can come out as early as turn 4, usually comes out turn 5, although depending on the matchup, depending on the deck, you can choose to bring it out really whenever you want. If you're playing against a slower matchup and you know they have answers, you simply wait until you have like 12 energy, for example, and when you try and play a 17 and they try and play a counter that would stop it, you just baby ape the counter, and then they don't get to stop you. You just get to do it anyway.
Yeah.
So it's in this particular deck, it's realistically unstoppable. The reason why you run it at 2 and not at 1, because there's a lot of other blue decks that run it at 1, is because this deck ramps so quickly, you have access to it faster, and you want to see it earlier. due to the fact that the deck draws so much, you will see one, and if you don't, it's unlucky. Like, I don't think I've had a game where I haven't seen it when I've needed it or wanted it, or at least been able to survive until I had it, in one way, shape, or form. And it's not so much a leveler, but it does end the game with this deck normally, simply because the threat you're playing is either the Bojack on your opponent's turn, the turn prior, or you're sitting there with a 1-drop Boo, and if you have 10 energy and you know they don't have a way to stop it, then, or even, and then you just go, 17, by the way, here's a dual attack triple strike, hey, you're dead. It gets them from 4 to 0, because you swing with a crit, you swing with 2 triple strikes, they're not living.
Yeah.
Android 17 wins the game. It's by far the best game ender for this particular deck. The deck can win without it. Like, you don't need to have board this card in order to win, but it is the card that says, all right, we've had a great game, thank you very much, it's time to stop.
Yep. That is fair enough. It's kind of like that new card that I'm forgetting the name of, the 1-drop green card. That has, what's it called? It's a 1-drop green card that says your opponent may take all their life.
Yes, commemorative photo.
Commemorative photo. What a good card. And good then card. On to the final card, the super secret tech, the one of Tragedy Overground. For those that don't know, it is a field card. This card can't be removed from your battle area by skills of your opponent's battle cards. When your opponent plays a battle card with an energy cost of 4 or more, it's placed in its owner's energy in rest mode instead. When this card is activated, choose all of your opponent's battle cards, ignoring barrier, and place them in their owner's energy in rest mode. Go for it. Talk as much as you want about this beauty.
Yeah, okay. As I mentioned, you see through most of the deck, so you're more often than not going to see this card at some point. You don't always need it. It's your one true form of mass map barrier removal should you need it. This deck runs nothing else of the Zamasu package, so if you were playing this card, you are paying 9 energy for it, which in most decks is not going to happen, but in this deck, 10 energy happens almost every single game, 14 energy happens on other games, I have had 15 or 16 energy before. You have it to spare. It's a dumb card. Being able to wipe an opponent's board and stop them from playing things with an energy cost of 4 or more, for many decks, simply turns off their decks. If you're playing against Invoker, they cannot drop the 6-drop. If you're playing against Bojack decks, they cannot drop any of their Bojack cards because they're all 4 or more. If you're playing against like Cooler, they cannot drop the 5-drop Coolers. If you're playing against the Dark Broly's, well, they can't play their deck at all. They can't play their battle cards. If you get to play this card against most decks, not all, but most decks, you don't play it against a Weenie Rush deck. But if you against those other decks, it just switches off the game, and it leaves them with no play at all whatsoever. If you can board this card, and I boarded it 3 times in the recent event and a couple times in the other events. If you're playing this leader, you should play this card at 1 copy. I don't recommend more because you don't need more, and having more than that it would be just clunky when you see the other one. But the 1 copy just wins games because, like, even if you get to just the 9 energy and you play it, and then you untap 1, you've wiped your opponent's board and they can't play the game. And any card that says your opponent can't play the game usually wins.
Indeed.
So this is one of those.
Indeed, just like Vegeta and King Piccolo. Just
really, really disgusting is that because the deck is so defensive, there are times where I have chosen to play the Tragedy Overground the turn before an Android 17, which means the first turn is spent wiping their board and making sure that they can't play a card, and then the following turn wipes their hand.
Yep, that's real nasty.
So, yeah, Tragedy Overground is an awesome card, and if you're playing this deck, don't be afraid to pay 9 for this card. Against the right matchups, it just wins.
Yeah, very, very good card.
Just to clarify, 9 energy happens on turn 5 or 6. Yep. So your opponent it's happening very quickly.
Indeed. Let's talk about your matchups in the TAC regional. So that was the one that happened today, and we're recording it essentially right after. So round 1, you had a no-show. That must have been a really tough matchup for you.
That was actually annoying. I was really looking forward to playing, and it was unfortunate that I rocked up at the board ready to go, and my opponent didn't show. That's just unfortunate.
Yeah.
But hey, we do.
Happens. Round 2 was Margin Vegeta.
Margin Vegeta hyper aggro deck. So if anyone's afraid that this deck can't survive hyper aggro, you are wrong. This deck is good. as long as you see the right pieces. Any number of D Magics, Final Shines, and or Baby Hatch, and you will survive. In that particular matchup, although I'm not going to necessarily vouch for the skill level of my opponent, I can say that there really was nothing he could have done. On turn one, when I was on my turn one, I was able to. Sorry, hang on. I went first. I charged a card past. He did his usual stuff, set up his field card, and was getting ready to do his Majin stuff on turn two. And on the following turn, when I swung with my leader and hit him with a big attack, he was like, "Oh, I'm going to have to take that," because it was like 35k. I think it had a Zeno and it had an Ultra Instinct Kamehameha, so it was super big. Yep. It ranked to 3, and so when he had his next turn with 3 energy on turn 2, you can Baby Hatch. And Baby Hatch shut down turn 2, which is usually that kill turn. On turn 3, because you had 4 energy, the Unison comes out. And the Unison can now bottom deck any of the threats and or block, and you have the energy with the D Magics and the Final Shines to continue getting the attacks. He never actually came close to getting back another damage in. So, and there was no way to get out of it. The following turn, after the Unison, was not only stopped by the Baby Hatch on one turn, but it was stopped by the Ready to Rumble Vegeta the following turn. So he has to swing through wall after wall. You hear he just can't attack. And a hyper aggro deck like that, if it can't kill on turn 2 or in this case 3, it's not killing ever against a deck like this, because once we've got our setup, you're not getting through.
Indeed. Then round 3, the Beerus Invoker deck.
Beerus Invoker was a fun matchup, and I actually played that one on stream. So for anyone who wants to go and watch that match, they absolutely can. It was a fun game to play. He was running like a ramp version of Beerus, trying to play the Invoker Catastrophic Blow package to win. I saw a Catastrophic Blow discarded when I was on like 6 life, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna take another damage. If he wants to cat blow me, he has to cat blow me from 6. Yeah. And so I basically sat there building up an extremely big board rather easily. Bojack hit the board, Boo was on the board, the 1-drop. I don't think I ever played the 7-drop, but I had the option to do it multiple times. My Unison was on the board, I had Great Saiyaman on the board, and so I just never let him go near the leader. And when I dropped Android 17, his entire game plan came to a screeching halt, because I played 17 while he was still at like 5 energy, which is silly considering he was a ramp deck too. And then the following turn, when I dropped SS4 Vegeta, followed by the turn after Tragedy Overground. Tragedy Overground just ends the game on the spot because he doesn't have a win con anymore. Yeah. Which is basically what happened there. Like, when I say he doesn't have a win con, he can ramp his leader to 16 energy, but he has to survive 4 turns to do that. And he doesn't have the board or hand. So that was always in control. Surge Cell was unfortunate. I actually had a way to win that. When I played my first SS4 Vegeta, I did a draw 4, and it was awesome. I played the second Vegeta, and for whatever reason, I chose to draw 3 cards and charge 1. And had I have drawn all 4, I would have won, because when he tried to rip out the last card from my hand 2 turns later, that he wouldn't have been able to rip out one last card, and I would have had the negate to survive. So that was my bad on losing. It wasn't that the deck was weak or bad to Surge Cell. That was me not drawing 4 cards when I should have drawn 4 cards instead of 3. So that was very, very winnable. And it's kind of silly because you're playing against a hand control matchup with mono blue. And for anyone who's played this game for any length of time, mono blue's typically had a bad time against hand destruction. But this deck is quite the opposite, because when you play a card that says draw 4, it's kind of nuts.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. Soul Striker was the Soul Striker Bojack deck that people are familiar with, and this is where I think that the SS4 leader really shows what it's capable of. The SS4 leader, this version of the deck, has a very big advantage over Soul Striker, because when Soul Striker plays its Unison, whether it be a Majin Buu or in most cases the Gogeta Unison, they want the combo step to play their Bojacks. That deck thrives on the combo step. The deck that I'm playing can use the combo step, but it only realistically needs the combo step once, and it enters the combo step by using a blocker to save the Unison.
Yeah.
That deck doesn't have a blocker. So unless they hold a negate, and they don't hold many negates, they literally have D-Magic and usually not much more, their Unison's going to die. So you just keep swinging at the Unison with everything, and they drop one Unison a turn on average because it keeps dying turn after turn after turn. And because the rest of your cards are removing their board as well, it's very hard for them to maintain any sort of value to get through to you. And as a result of being able to play turn stop after turn stop, Ready to Rumble, Baby Hatch, a bunch of blockers, like for anyone who says, the 4-drop Bojack with dual attack that can remove a thing, you're sitting there with a great Saiyaman on the board with barrier, so they can't choose it. And when they swing with dual attack the first time, not only do you kill it, so they can't attack the second time, but you restand and get to block again. Which one got more value there?
Yeah.
The cards in this deck more or less hard counter a deck like that. And to make matters worse for Soul Striker, we get to our threats first. We can drop 17 before they drop food. We can, and not to mention we can God Sealing the food should they want to play it, but we can drop 17 before they do. We can play our threats a turn earlier or 2 turns earlier, or sometimes even 3 turns earlier than they do. So they're always on the back foot in that regard. Yes, they draw a lot of cards with apes, but if they're spending all their energy on drawing cards and they can't do anything with those cards, it doesn't really matter. And at some point, all those cards go to their deck anyway when 17 gets played, whether it be on turn 5, 6, or whether it be on turn 7, 8 when you have like 12 energy and they can't stop it.
Yeah. Indeed. And then round 6 was King Vegeta. How did that go?
King Vegeta, and I was really almost silly in this one because I actually had a way to win. On the very final turn, for the record, he got me down to 1 life very, very early in the game. I think it was like turn 3, I was down on 1 life. And we got to like turn 6. So he couldn't deal another damage past that, just to give you an idea of the wall that you create. And when it came to that final turn, he swung with Leader. And it didn't occur to me that I needed to remove the 6-drop Gogeta because he could burn me if he removed every card on my board. But if I had recognized that, I would have simply activated a Zeno Super Combo, added the Galactic Buster from my energy to my hand, activated a Bojack, and bottom decked the Gogeta. He would not have been able to evolve on top of it, and he would not have been able to burn me, and I would have won that game as well.
Yeah.
So it's not that the deck wasn't capable of it. It was me not recognizing the way to win that particular game then and there, not recognizing what the actual potential win con he was going for there. But if I was to play that matchup again, it's probably still going to win that one because he's not getting through that wall. And when I describe a wall, the Unison alone plays a wall. I will just shout out one thing on the Unison though. People think that the Majin Buu Unison is good when it has 4 markers, as it's hard to get rid of 4 markers. You can pay more than 4 for this Unison. You can pay 5 or 6, and as Benny Zhang from our locals will know, when I played against him, I've played it for 8.
Yeah. He said that on the stream today, that you played it for 8 against him.
Yeah, and it's funny, because when you drop it with that many markers, the opponent just sits there and looks at it, the Unison, and says, that Unison is never going away, and it's going to bottom deck like all my cards turn after turn.
Yeah.
And no other deck should be allowed to do that, but this deck can. So the deck is capable of winning every matchup that it played, and the only ones that it lost were completely down to my decisions. So that was entirely my doing. And that's not calling me a good or a bad player. It was just a micro decision that I needed to take note of and improve for later, which is what I like doing anyway. Yeah,
that's fair enough. And in particular with that loss against King Vegeta, it's those kind of cards that he would have won, that he did use in the deck that just wins in best of 1, right? When we get back to best of 3, when COVID dies down, that's not going to win you the best of 3.
Best of 2, or best of 3, the wall gets much harder to break because you can side into exactly the cards that counter that specific deck, and there are plenty of options for a sideboard like this, as there are many cards that people potentially run in with this deck that would add extra defensive power that they may have noticed are not in the deck, because generally it doesn't need it.
Yeah, and alright, let's move on to your matchups for your Store Champ Regional. So round 1, you had a draw against Blue Trunks. How did that go? No, just quickly, these are best of 3. These.
They were best of 3, yes.
Yeah.
So against the Blue Trunks, it was a guy from my locals who's already had practice playing against the deck, and he knew exactly what he needed to do. And he lucked out very, very hard, and it was awesome to see him do it. Basically, I activated my Android 17, and I had 2 great Saiyamen on the board. And when I did one swing into his leader to drop him down, the card he drew into was his Gotenks Unison, the blue Gotenks Unison that can bottom deck 2 barrier threats. So he drew into the exact card he needed to remove both the Saiyamen and swing for game.
That's nice.
and then he runs two of them in his deck, and the other one had already been used up.
Oof.
So it was one of them left, and he drew into it. Go him.
Yeah.
But barring that from occurring, the other game of that I won, and it's definitely a favorable matchup for Vegeta. The ramp that Trunks gets is good for one turn. The ramp that Vegeta gets stays for the game, so it's generally in Vegeta's favor.
Yeah, makes sense.
Bojack should theoretically be an auto win. Just because you can choose to swing at their unison. They don't run as many negates. It's similar to the Soul Striker thing. They thrive on the combo step. You either don't give them the combo step, or they try and attack to try and get into a combo step, and they either swing into revenge blockers, or they swing into negates, which stop the combo step. So they don't really have a chance to play the game.
Yeah.
Blue Baby, again, some people would think Blue Baby would give this deck a hard time. Blue Baby does not give this deck a hard time at all. Because you ramp faster them, and they think, but I can negate it. Well, let's think about this from the Baby's player's point of view. The reason Baby is strong is because in the early turns, it builds a hand and builds its advantage so that when it needs to start stopping all of the attacks, it has the ability to stop all the attacks after turn after turn after turn.
Yeah.
That means it usually would much prefer to take a few life early to its hand. If I'm swinging with my leader and they're spending those negates on the early turns, then as mentioned previously, you just play the card advantage game and they lose it very quickly. Mm-hmm. Because either they let you ramp, and because they're playing a slow deck, you don't care if you don't ramp on the first two. You could ramp on turn 3, 4, or 5. As long as you ramp once, you get ahead of them. You get to play your threats first. And they won't be able to stop that. It gets even more silly, because when you awaken, and typically Baby does need to kill you in some point, and you will end up awakened against Baby, because it needs to swing to draw to gain advantage. So if you want to, you can stall on playing your unison, which I have done against it, just so they swing into the leader. When you're awakened, and you swing with your lead, and they negate, your leader gets to attack a second time. So not only do they have to stop the first swing, they have to stop the second swing, which means they use up all their negates. And as a result, you play your things before them, and they use up all their negates, or they let you ramp. If they let you ramp, then you drop bombs, and they can't stop it. If they don't let you ramp, they lose cards in hand until they have to let you ramp. They don't get a choice. So Blue Baby should be theoretically be an auto win if you know how to do it.
Yeah, and then round 4 was Invoker.
Invoker was simple. It's not hard. The deck runs so many ways to stop it. So if they try to go the Victory Strike route, you have so many extra card negates with both Dimension Magic and Final Shine. And you can side into more if you so need it, but those 6 are generally enough because you can just keep them just for the Victory Strike swing. So you see so many cards in your deck. Seeing 2 of any 6 cards realistically should happen.
Yep.
Especially when one of them draws you into more cards. It's kind of cool. And if they're trying to play the burn, well, your deck doesn't need to take life to draw cards. So you can very easily afford to put down a blocker or your unison and absorb every single one of their leader swings and keep yourself at very high life. Being best of 3, I won the first game with like 6 or 7 life, unawakened. You didn't need to awaken. And on the second game, when I sided in Result of Training, I basically ended the game on 8 life, awakened. So with multiple answers. And when they looked at my hand to try and rip things out later, they basically looked at a wall of 4 different counterplays and 4 different negates, and they can't rip them all out. So Invoker was not a problem. They don't have a way to win. And they can't realistically stop you ramping either, because yes, their leader acts like a 15k, but when you're swinging for 25 or 30k or more on those early turns, and they need to filter through their hands, and they can't afford to negate those first few swings, you're almost guaranteed to ramp. So it happens quickly.
Definitely. And then, unfortunately, you had another loss to King Vegeta. How did this one end up?
Yeah, King Vegeta was a hyper aggro version that spammed the field full of 15ks and basically kills on turn 2. Yeah. And it was particularly bad in that particular matchup because for the one and only time in both events, all the games combined, I didn't see either of the cards I hard mulled for. So when I swung, I wasn't able to pump my leader. I was not able to get the ramp off in order to turn on Baby Hatch. I was not able to get the cards out onto the board to set up the wall, and so I died before the wall was up both games.
That is very unfortunate.
And that's RNG. If you can't see the bits that you can, it's unfortunate. It's going to happen at some point. You might say, "Oh, you should have run something else to do it." I can play 20 games, 30 games even, and it's only happened twice. So, statistically speaking, it shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
All
right.
But it happened against an aggressive matchup. So, what can we do?
Which is unfortunate. All right. Now let's talk over some cards that we can consider in this deck. As Anthony has gone over quite a extensive analysis, so why not keep it going? So first of all, we have SS4 Son Goku, Protector of the Earth. It is a 5-drop unison that on play, your opponent can't attack with battle cards unless they choose another one of their battle cards at energy cost of 2 or more and place it at the bottom of their owner's deck. It's got a -1, you get a draw 2, then choose one card your hand and bottom deck it. Or a -2, you choose all your opponent's battle cards, so ignoring barrier, return them to their owner's hand. Amazing unison, it's good board removal for blue, and 5 cost doesn't really matter too much. Then you got the 6-drop Master Roshi Maximum Muscle. It is a barrier dual attack, critical, 25k. When you play it, you choose 2 of your opponent's battle cards, switch and place them at the bottom of the deck, and then at the end of your turn you get a draw card. And then we have some more cards for the Boo engine, which is the Majin Buu Dawn of Rampage. When this card is under a when this card has a Majin Buu on top of it, the Majin Buu gains barrier. And then the 7-drop, it's a X evolve for 1 blue. You place 2 cards from your hand in your drop area. So triple strike. When a card evolves into this, switch this card to active mode and it gains 30k power for the duration of the turn.
Okay, so starting with SS4, this was in the main board in the previous iteration. It's moved into the sideboards simply because there aren't enough decks that are putting out mass barrier threats that I need to potentially remove. And the deck has enough removal for general stuff as it is. But should your opponent be playing a bunch of barrier things, you need to remove a threat. What makes this card so good is it also acts as a pseudo turn stop. When it bounces everything to your opponent's hand with its -2, and it's auto when it was played, that means that your opponent has to actually KO their cards in order to be able to attack with their battle cards, it can guarantee an extra turn. What's particularly disgusting with this card, if you're able to pull it off, and it's not hard to pull off if you really want to go for it, is to play it on a particular turn, -2, bounce the entire board to their hand, and then simply make sure that it keeps at least 2 markers on for the following turn. And on the following turn, any cards they play, you bounce them back and then play a 17. So you could do it all in one turn if you have 12 energy, but you can even do it turns consecutively, and it's not hard to do because he acts like a pseudo turn stop and a board wipe. I would side it in against anything with mass barrier cards. So, for example, if you were to play against like Yellow Jiren, and for the record, you can beat this deck even without this card, without this card anyway. But if you were to play against a deck with a whole bunch of barrier threats, this should come in and just bounce them all. Master Roshi is a good card for the deck to consider if you don't necessarily need the utility of the SS4 Vegeta, or you just want the ability to remove a couple of threats and swing with crits. It's just a value generator, and it's for those mid-range decks that can't really deal with it. If you're playing against green, absolutely consider this card, just because it won't be able to be hit by Frieza. It will swing for crits twice or remove threats. And don't be afraid to swing at this card at your opponent's battle cards in Rust mode too, just because removing a battle card is the same as hitting their life in terms of card advantage. Sometimes it's better. So you can just use this to clear 2 threats and swing it to other things, and it can clear a board. And then it draws a card at the end of every turn. And if you're playing a deck which can go turn after turn after turn, wall after wall after wall, have any Unison that draws a card, plus a Roshi that draws a card, plus a Leader the Swing that draws a card, you're not going to run out of cards, and you will win the card advantage wall with this card at some point. As for the Boo cards, it depends on how heavily you want to move into the Boo engine. Both of these were in my main board previously. They simply came out because they weren't seeing enough usage. But I did really like the cards when they were in there. If I the 4-drop Boo, when placed underneath the 7-drop, gives it barrier. It doesn't allow it to attack twice. It doesn't give it the ability to remove cards, but just giving it barrier. To give it a scenario where that's coming handy, at Locals a couple of weeks ago, I was playing against Bojack, and they put out the 4-drop Boo Unison. I activated the Boo, played the 7-drop, put the 4-drop underneath it, it swung at their Unison. They couldn't minus it to remove my card because it had barrier, so they just simply lost all 3 markers on their Boo Unison. It just killed the Unison straight out. A triple strike with barrier just says, nope, you're gone now. And the other reason to add the Ultimate Evil Majin Buu, the 7-drop, is that you've got the potential to play it on the same turn that you play the 7-drop Ultimate Absorption. The Ultimate Absorption, when it's actually played, untaps one of your blue energy, and that one blue energy can be used to play one of these. And if you want to swing with a triple strike, and then swing with a triple strike, and then play this and swing with another triple strike, you can end a game like that very easily. And it swings for a 60. And if you happen to have a second one, if you want to put in more than them, evolve on it again and make it up to 90k. Or again, if you want to go up more than that. You shouldn't need to, but you can.
Yeah,
it's an easy game ender at that point. A very cheap in terms of energy game ender. And in terms of the discard too, in order to play it, you have so many cards in your hand that you really don't care.
Yeah. And then the last card to consider is Result of Training,
which, as I mentioned, was in my sideboard previously. Result of Training is a set 1 card, which these days has been power crept beyond belief by everything that says, I can awaken when I play my Unison, or I can awaken when I'm at 4 life, but I self-awaken to that really easily, or everything like that. This is like a card from a bygone era. But in this particular deck, against any control matchup, you ramp to 5 energy so quickly that you might end up on 6, 7, or 8 life, and they might think, I need to just like try and control it because your board's beginning to get out of control. You've got your Unison, you've got your blockers, then they just like, I can't get to the leader. I'm not going to try and get it to the leader. I need to try and clear it. And you're like, okay, fine. Results of Training, by the way, you failed. Now I'm awakened and I'm still on massive life totals. Yeah. And I did do that against the Invoker, and I did it at 8 life. So awakened at 8 life is kind of fun.
Very, very nasty.
And if you're on 5 energy, something worth considering is that you can activate Result of Training and play your Boo Unison in the same turn.
Indeed.
So it's worth it.
Very, very strong.
You should definitely training on your radar for this deck.
And then moving on to cards for next format, when Sun Goku Calamity Challenger comes out, we can run the Path to the Infinite Ultra Instinct Sign Goku combo. So let's start off with Calamity Challenger, the Sun Goku. It is a deflect blocker. It's got an activate main. If your lead is a blue Saiyan card and you have 3 or more energy, play this card from your hand and draw a card. First of all, that's great. The second, you've got Sun Goku Path to Infinite for 1 blue. If your leader is blue and you also have you also choose one of your blue battle cards with an energy cost of 4 or less and return it to your owner's hand, you got to play this card, and then you can X evolve on top of the Sun Goku Path to Sun Goku Path to the Infinite with Ultra Instinct Sign Sun Goku. It costs 2 blue, and you place 1 card from your hand in your drop area. You evolve on top of a blue Sun Goku with an energy cost of 5 or more. It is triple strike. Your opponent can't combo for the duration of this card's battle. So once you're in the battle, you're essentially guaranteed 3 damage. And when you evolve into this card, return all your opponent's battle cards to their hand. So yeah.
So this combo going into the next format is something that I brought up simply because this leader, again, abuses this more than most other leaders. The Goku Calamity Challenger requires you to have 3 energy. In this deck, that's turn 2. Yeah. And turn 2, draw a card, play a blocker. If you run 4 of these, you can afford to lose the first one. You'll see the other several throughout. It's extra defense that can also help defend your Unison if they aren't able to remove it. And moving into following formats, this might, I'm not gonna be happy about it, but it might replace the Boo package to some level, to some degree. Just because this does act as board removal, and it's mass board removal. And it won't be easy to stop, because when you have enough energy, like if you have 8 energy, which happens extremely easily in this deck, because you ramp to 10 or 12 or 15 energy, having 8 is not difficult. Even if they've got a way to try and stop the UI sign from coming down, you can have the 5 extra energy on top of that to baby ape and prevent them from preventing it, in which case it's going to get its damage in. The Path to the Infinite also has an extra benefit in this particular deck, because it can be used both with Calamity Challenger, which is obviously an awesome card, but it also returns Ready to Rumble back to your hand, which means you can reuse it. And reusing a turn stop is disgusting, especially when it means that they can't stop you turn after turn after turn.
Indeed.
So there's real utility going into this particular engine moving into the next format. So anyone thinking about building this deck, do consider this.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that's going to about wrap it up. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you made it through this far, congratulations. You really must love SS4 Vegeta. Feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe down below. Before we sign off, Anthony, is there any shout outs or anything like that you would like to say before we wrap up?
Yeah, sure. Shout out to my brother as the training partner. I believe you've got another video coming out from his deck list. He's a
Indeed.
great training buddy and practice partner. Shout out to all the boys at Cardtastic Locals. Best group to play with, best group to train with, and always fun to be there when we can. And shout out to anyone who has helped me with my Dragon Ball journey throughout the many years.
All right. Too easy. We'll catch you guys later and have a good one. See ya.
Cheers. Thanks.